Hi, everybody. It's Katie here for Johnny Like Sink or Swim. And we are, I was going to say, in the coldest state in the nation, in Alaska. However, I'm in the Midwest, and last night we had 23 below with the wind chill. So Naim, we have Naim Shabani. And what was the temperature by you last night?
We were right around there too, but there's moments where you guys have us beat. That's true.
Wow,
Unbelievable.
really? I guess I can wear my mink coats to see it. And by the way,
How you doing, John?
yeah, yeah. How's everything?
Good, good.
We got a big Albanian community there where you live in Anchorage?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good, I'd say about 1,000 population in Alaska overall, and mostly concentrated in Anchorage. But yeah, we have a pretty decent, close-knit community.
Tell everybody hello.
You got it. Absolutely. They're going to be excited to hear that I spoke to you.
I'm excited every time I hear there's more Albanians somewhere else in another state, city. So, the more I hear that, I just talked to you off air that I'm definitely going to come there and visit you. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
look forward to
We'd definitely enjoy your visit.
it. I appreciate it.
So Naim, you're Albanian. You ended up in Alaska. Can you tell us a little bit about your family background and how you ended up coming to America, and then obviously why you ended up in Alaska of all places?
Yeah, absolutely. Like most Albanians or generation Albanian immigrants, of course, there's a story. I was born in Krčova, which is in the western part of Macedonia. When I was 3 years old, my family moved to Chicago, or rather immigrated to Chicago. In the mid 80s, or pretty much throughout all of the 80s, there was a lot of political unrest in that part of the world. A lot of families moved at that time, seeking a better life for their family. And we had the privilege to be able to come to America. So we ended up in Chicago. There was where we're from. There was a relatively decent sized community of Albanians from our region in Chicago. So I pretty much grew up there until my mid-teens. Eventually, we moved to Alaska. My mom's brother had been out here since the mid '70s, and he owned a taxi company in the western part of Alaska. It's a really small town. So my family moved out there. My dad essentially ended up working for my uncle. So that's how we moved to Alaska. And again, I was about 16 years old at the time, and we've pretty much been here since. That's in a nutshell how we ended up here.
So I have a sister. I just left Chicago. I was there with a bunch of Albanian guys. I know some of them, some I just met, good guys actually. And my sister lives in
Yeah.
Glenview. So I'm familiar with Chicago. And I have another guy, a young black kid, Bugatti, that lives in the South Side. So I always say hello to him when I mention Chicago. Some of his friends, he's in the music industry. So I'm familiar with Chicago. Not, I'm not a big fan of the governor, Priska, whatever his name, Pritzker, or the mayor, Lightfoot. Crime's rampant there. These poor kids in the South Side, especially, are getting killed left and right. No one's doing anything about it. So politically, I'm pretty active and involved, and I'm an inner city guy. So I'd love to see opportunities for these kids instead of them getting killed and go to prison. So I'm hoping a new mayor wins next month when they have their election, and maybe somebody does something and are concerned about these young kids. So uh, it's a
Yeah,
shame.
John. I mean, I grew up there, and I still have a lot of immediate family. And actually, a majority of my family is still in Illinois. Perhaps no longer directly in the city of Chicago, but I visit frequently. And as a kid, I'll say I had a great childhood. It's an excellent place to grow up. But as an adult, I've changed my views tremendously on pretty much Illinois politics as a whole. I think it's a terrible place to live, frankly. And then spending all these years in Alaska, which is a very conservative state, you do start to appreciate, what it truly means to be free in America, and what it means to live in the land of the free. and Illinois and places like California, unfortunately New York as well, are no longer that.
Yeah.
Were you in the
Well,
city or the suburbs?
Pardon?
Were you in the city of Chicago or in the suburbs? I'm from Chicago originally, that's why I asked.
Sure. Well, I mean, definitely not in the city. Or rather, I grew up in the city, but what I was saying, refers to essentially the whole state because it's state
Oh.
politics that affect everyone. But the city would be unfortunately worse.
Mhm.
you know what the problem is? Like right now, I think crime is up. It's incredible. It's up, I think, again, 30% more from the year before. And nothing's happening with it. And, as a young guy, man, I grew up obviously on the streets. I was a wild guy, which we all know, in and out of prison. But as you get older and you have children, you don't want your kids growing up in an area where they go on the street and they get hit with a stray bullet or they get involved in something and they go to prisons. So, your outlook changes. And just recently, there was a picture out in the newspaper. There's a couple articles coming out of me taking pictures with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And people are, on the attack, some in a good way, some in a bad way. And I'm not the guy I used to be. So I try to tell people the same thing. I advocate for law and order now. I advocate for exactly what you're doing with the shirt. When people can't see it, right? And it's about doing the right thing with your life, become a businessman, hustle in the right direction. And, I'm a big advocate. And one of the reasons why I wanted to come on with you is because of my daughter passing away not quite 6 months from fentanyl. They're on the street, kids picking up drugs that are illegal, thinking they're going to get one thing, and they end up with fentanyl and they're dying 100,000 plus a year. So I advocate for situations with things that are legal, like what you're doing with CBD and oils and different products, and not buying it off the street where somebody takes something and thinks it's something safe and it's not. They got to go to people like yourself that are doing positive things, making money in the right way. So I'm a big advocate now of trying to save some lives.
Yeah, and John, I apologize, but we did get disconnected there the first half, but I did catch the second half of that. And what my business is, I mean, there's still a lot of stigma involved. I mean, it's a coin flip. Half the people agree, half don't. However, as it's still an infant industry, the legal side of it at least. And as years go by, the states and institutions are more able to do studies on the effects of it now, whereas in the past they couldn't because of its legal status. And a lot of positive data is coming out in relation to crime, in relation to social impact, and just general health. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times we hear from our customers that they've essentially ditched their opioids and replaced it with cannabis, and stuff like that. So yeah, the days of buying stuff on the street are hopefully, in regards to cannabis, are hopefully near its end, and that'll alleviate a lot of resources for law enforcement to focus on the other harder drugs that are definitely plaguing smaller communities all across the country.
Katie, you have a take on that?
Well, the smaller communities, I live in one now, and they like to pretend like everything is rosy all the time, but you can read the paper and read the police reports. It's not. It's just as rampant in the smaller towns as it is in the bigger cities, I think, sometimes, because they have this facade that everything is just rosy. So, I come from a generation where, drugs are whatever. And so how do you get across to people like me who don't really understand what it is you're doing, what the difference is between, buying a bag at school or whatever,
Right.
and what you do?
Well, Katie, there's always going to be that hard line of folks that you just cannot convince, and that's okay. That's fine. What's very important is that the next generation is educated enough on the matter that to them it's not a extreme, it's not a substance of rebellion. When I was a kid, smoking cigarettes was kind of the thing. Unfortunately, I still smoke cigarettes, but that was kind of how you rebelled, right? And then in the later years, unfortunately, it became drugs and stuff like that. So hopefully, this will be kind of the medium where someone could access it legally without legal repercussions. And ultimately, when something is available, it's no longer a rebellion, if you will.
That's not taboo
Uh,
anymore.
that's correct. Yeah, when something becomes not taboo at that point, it's not fun, I guess. But yeah, so back to your question, how do anything that's legal and the taxes is paid on, and there's a storefront with an open sign and a menu, and the people from the neighborhood work there and patronize it, you start to get a different feel for it when it's right next door to your local bakery or whatnot. It does become more normal for sure.
Naim, how long you been in the business now, in the CBD?
4 years now, and actually CBD is a very small portion of what we sell, John. We're actually a full-on cannabis.
Cannabis
Dispensary.
complete, yeah.
Correct.
Well, I was
Yeah,
looking actually, whoever designed this, I love it, right? Because you got the
that was me.
okay. And, so when I got the shirts, I've been wearing them. I was like, hey, can I wear these shirts?
Thank you.
To us doing this interview and I figured, I said, you know what? I'm really, because I'm a little bit more knowledgeable of the cannabis because of my sons. So my sons like it. They're an advocate for it. Me personally, as a father and a guy that's talking about law and order now and trying to get people to do a legitimate hustle and business, I think it's better than alcohol. Alcohol's legal. I'm a drinker because of the way, we grew up as in that, obviously in that era. But the young kids, a lot of them don't drink. They smoke, or they use cannabis and CBD oils for pain. And and my son's been telling me, Dad, try the CBD oil for the pain because I got a lot of back and hip pain. And I've tried it a couple of times and it's actually good. And I also am very knowledgeable of marijuana and stuff because of the industry I was in when it was illegal, right? I was in that industry. I bring it in from Mexico and different ports. And so I was hugely involved in the drug industry, unfortunately, right? And I have a friend, Lee Whitley, who I had on the show before. He did 18 years out of Canada for moving marijuana. And now he uses that past of him being in prison to try to help with the CBD industry and cannabis of curing cancer. So he went from one extreme because it wasn't acceptable to an industry that it is acceptable by Congress, by senators, and by our government that says it's okay now. Now, me, I've been an advocate for a long time. I'm not a smoker or anything like that, but I'm anything that comes out of the ground and it's legitimate and it actually is helping people. Why not? If you smoke, if you drink an alcohol and you could die from alcohol and poisoning, they know it's very harmful to the body. Yet this doesn't have those repercussions of using, as far as I understand so far. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, back to what you said about the essential black market. Think of it this way: when the black market sells cannabis, you literally don't know what's in there. You have no clue. The legal side of it goes through stringent testing. It has to meet certain requirements. There can't be any kind of chemical. I mean, when you grow marijuana, there's certain nutrients and whatnot that are fed into the plant. And all of this comes out essentially in an autopsy of the plant before it could be put on the shelf for sale, right? So you, the consumer, you have think of like on any food in the back where you have the nutrition guide, right? For if you're to drink a can of Coca-Cola, you can see exactly how much sugar is in there, how much corn syrup, all that stuff. Well, it's the same with legal cannabis. You see exactly what you're consuming, and that's a very big distinction between the black market and the legal side of it, because it produces consumer confidence. Number one, you know what you're buying. Number two, you know who you're buying it from. So that is absolutely important. As far as drinking and smoking, like you said, we grew up in an era where, you know, there's still a lot of stigma behind cannabis. You know, with my background being Albanian and all, if anyone saw you with a joint, that was equivalent to being on crack. You know, that's
People that don't know that, they don't know yet. It's
Are you kidding me? If your dad even heard a rumor of that, you'd get the belt up and down all day long.
Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't have to be true. Just a rumor was good enough. So in any case, you know, we grew up at a time where you know, smoking cigarettes and drinking was those were your party substances, and I can attest to both of them that they are far worse than cannabis. I'm not a big consumer of cannabis. For me, it's mostly, you know, I enjoy the business side of it, but I never got into it at a young age as a consumer. So that's not gonna, you know, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, right? So it is definitely better than long term. It is definitely better than smoking cigarettes and downing a bottle of whiskey occasionally.
I got to tell you something. I've just thought about this.
Sure.
Is Macedonia, I believe, is one of the first parts of Europe countries that legalize this, right? Cannabis, and you're originally from there, that region.
Yeah.
Somebody contacted me a couple of years ago about this out of Macedonia.
I don't know much about that, but if I had to guess, I would say they would have legalized the medicinal side of it, not recreational.
That's what I'm talking about. The medicinal side.
So I mean, there might be some pharmaceutical company that's based out there that, you know, got it to pass where they could grow it for medicinal purposes.
Right.
But I don't think there's actual sales where someone off the street, where a member of the public off the street could go into a retail shop. I don't think that exists, but I'm sure
I remember when they contacted me from there, they wanted to see if I was interested. And it's been a couple of years, and I was just thinking about it. I says, maybe.
I haven't heard anything, John. As far as retail establishments go, I haven't heard anything. But on the growing side, there's a lot of states, even or rather a lot of countries and states where the growing of it for medicinal purposes is legal, but they don't sell to the public. There might be some university out there that's, you know, conducting a study. They would need legal rights to grow it, so they're not breaking the law while they're studying, right? So there's a lot of that goes on. So it could be something like that. And I bet in Macedonia, I mean, those, you know, fine folks over there are quick to speculate. I'm sure when that happened, someone probably thought that the next logical step will be that there's just going to be shops all over, you know, which is not always the case.
Well, the first legal grow in California is actually owned by a guy I'm friends with. He's an Albanian guy. And
really?
Yeah. So I know that the industry, and now New Jersey is bidding. They put in the paperwork now. Guys are bidding, and one of my friends is bidding. Also, he's a farmer. He owns one of the largest farms in New Jersey. Who's bidding on trying to get the legal grow aspect of marijuana now. So, you know, the government's embracing it. So, you know, when
they are, John, but there's sorry to interrupt. They are embracing it slowly. However, the way they're implementing the regulation and the licensing for it, you know, some states are better than others for sure. We talked about Illinois earlier. You know, we could touch on that one more time. Illinois did it in a very lacking transparent way, where
Colorado
did it right. So put it to you this way: you and I probably cannot get a license in Illinois. It's one of those setups where before it even became legal, they knew essentially where the licenses are getting dispersed to.
Yeah.
There's basically 10 companies that own all of the shops in Illinois. Like, are you kidding me? In a state of 12 million population, only 10 companies own all of them. That doesn't sound very free market to me, you know.
I'll bet Nancy Pelosi knows who they are too.
She probably does, right? But yeah, I mean, the government is embracing it because they of course enjoy the tax money that's coming from it, but it's not being implemented as well as it could be. And then on the back end, speaking of the tax, it is also disproportionate just the way they have it structured. They essentially don't give you the benefits that a coffee shop or a restaurant or a laundromat would have. You're taxed in a different method. You can't deduct certain stuff. I mean, it is still very, very infant in regards to it becoming, just your typical shop down the street. There are still hoops and hurdles that not to mention that not every state has legalized it yet. You can go to jail for having a joint in your pocket in several states in America.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing, our government's no different. I always use the scenarios of I understand what the government's doing ahead of time in front of most people that are in this country because they use the tactics of the mafia, right? So, and I
Oh
see
yeah.
it. So, it's no different than bookmaking. I did a show on 60 Minutes Showtime on the legalization of gambling here in this country. I did it years ago. And, they got into the industry because of the tax money. There's billions of dollars you can use for the infrastructure. Then they got into the union business where the mob was in the union. Now the government's got their hands in the union also, all for the same reasons. They just present it different. And now they got into this business also because of the revenue it's bringing into each state and city and locals. So I understand, the maneuvering and the movement. If it benefits them, they do it, but they also control the industry where it's not a fair market. So they knock the mob, which I knock them off, right? So I do want to knock them off also, that they're full of crap and whatever I have to say about them. But the government's no different. They're just a bigger entity of the mafia, more controlled, more power. And unfortunately,
And similar to families in the mob, you have different states, and some are more lenient than others.
yeah.
So
You ever been in trouble in the past?
Not on a large scale, no.
Well, that's good. You're very educated. Do you have college?
No, actually, I barely made it out of high school, but I was always the smartest kid in class.
You're
I just
self-educated, actually, really, and I mean that. The way you handle
thank you.
you talk, the way you present yourself, you're business oriented. So, I tell kids all the time, follow if you got hustle and you do it the right way, because if you got that hustle and you got it in any industry, you can bring it to a business aspect and not get yourself jammed up.
Yeah. Well, John, my background, I don't know how we're doing on time here, but my background has a lot to do with a lot of the good choices that I've made. And I've made a few bad ones, don't get me wrong, but the good ones superseded the bad ones, luckily for me. But yeah, I mean, my family was a very, very poor family. Immigrated to America. The idea was my parents moved here to give their kids a better life, right? My mom was a housekeeper growing up. My dad was a carpenter, and they both passed away, unfortunately, well before their time. Yeah, thank you. But yeah, they both passed away well before their time, and they essentially sacrificed and donated their life. So me and my brother, I have one older sibling. They essentially donated their life so me and my brother could have a better life. So I literally have a duty to my parents to do better. I cannot be a loser, period. That is not an option for me because it would be a disgrace to my family. Why did they leave everything behind? So I could come here and do nothing, right? So that has been a lot of the seed for ambition and motivation for me and for my brother, who's also doing very well. So that's one of the benefits of being Albanian in our culture. The respect that we have not only for one another, but within the patriarchy of the home is really, really deep, and it's something you learn at a very young age. And I do think it helps keep you in line for most of the part.
That's such a manly, honorable thing to say. I love that.
Thank you.
So,
It's the truth.
Are you single?
So I'm married and I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, and I just had a boy 4 months ago.
How old are the kids?
8, 6 are the daughters, and the boy is 4 months old.
Oh, well, you really a young kid. That's congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That's
Nothing
my
better
last
than
one because
that.
I'm almost 40, and I'll tell you, changing diapers at this age is no walk in the park.
Yeah. How about your brother? Same thing. Does he have children?
He does. He's older. He's about 46, and his kids. He has 2 boys. They're 20 and 16, so they're much older. And he still lives in Central Illinois.
Are you with Albanian women or
Correct. Yes, I
other?
am. But she has a similar background to me. She's born and raised here, but yes, her family is Albanian as well.
I do have two questions for you, Naim. Is on your storefront. So if somebody walks in the door and they don't really know what they're looking for, maybe it's somebody like John was saying who has some, joint pain or whatever.
Sure.
How do you get them started on that? And then also, what is your clientele? Are they mostly the younger kids, or are they middle age, or what?
Thank you for that question, actually. The first part of that is our staff is extremely knowledgeable. I mean, these guys are coming from a background of using themselves, and maybe I shouldn't say here, but some of them even selling themselves in the past. But they're extremely knowledgeable on the product that they sell. And again, let's remember there's a lot of information in the legal market. There's a lot of information on the product itself. So it's really easy to sell the right product to the right person once they give you. It'd be similar to going to a pharmacy, and you check off boxes. Well, I have this, but it'll give me that side effect, so I don't want that, so I'll do this because of that side effect, and so on and so on. And those that are more knowledgeable in the industry, they're better at targeting what is the right product for you once they ask you some questions. Not unlike what you would experience at a doctor's office, basically. Clearly not to that level, but yes, you know what I mean. Now, the second part of that. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. Finish the second part, and then I'll ask you.
The second part is the spectrum of clientele that come in. You would be absolutely shocked when you think of a weed smoker. You think of the guy with the Rasta hat and the corn. You know what I mean? Like it's not that at all. I mean, you have from young to old, from every profession. You have lawyers and doctors that come in and purchase. It is well received amongst the community all across the board. There is no specific demographic that you could single out to say that, yeah, that's the only customers you have. I mean, it is literally from A to Z and everything in between.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because drinkers are the same.
It surprised me, honestly, at the beginning.
Well, yeah, maybe I've seen it over the years when we were in the industry. Years ago, I'm talking about, school teachers would come in to pick it up, judges, lawyers, people you wouldn't really imagine back then when it was taboo. So
correct.
At this point, what I wanted to ask you is, if somebody's from another town, another city, and they wanted to order from you, can you send to them? Can they order? And what is the name of your store and the exact street address so people know it?
Sure, thank you. Well, the store is called Double Eagle Cannabis. It is located at 2042 East 3rd Avenue in Anchorage, Alaska. And I have another store as well that's out in the village, but we won't talk about that one right now.
Yeah, I lost my question to do. That's what happens when you get old.
It was a good question too.
He probably has something for that, John, to help with your memory.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I got to tell you the truth. I'm impressed with this industry, but I'm really impressed with you because I didn't expect you to be how you are, actually. And I mean that, really a compliment, because
thank you.
I try to show. We had some guys on the other day from Canada, young brothers from Iran. Really, really nice guys. Positive. They're in a real estate business. And I'm trying to show different people there's ways to make money around the world. And don't be an idiot or knucklehead like I was for so many years. I wasted almost 20 years in prisons. I know people, they look at it and, they're impressed on what I survived through. I guess in a way, it's whatever it is, but they don't see the other part of it. you lose your family while you're there. You suffer. I recently lost my daughter. And that comes with not being around. And, so the physical pain we can all put up with. I tell everybody on a regular basis, the emotional pain that leaves you for the rest of your life, scarred, that people don't see the rest of it. So I try to help to make sure kids realize that. So in the future, they don't look up to some of that stuff. They look up to somebody like yourself and says, wait, there's ways to make money, be successful, be proud of yourself, make your parents so proud that, passed away, and hopefully they're looking down at us and they see that you're doing the right thing for your kids and your family. And really, it's easy for me to spew that other nonsense that I was involved with, but that's not the right way. I wouldn't tell anybody's kid to do that. And people that are romancing that other bullshit is you wouldn't tell your own kids. Nobody gives their own kids drugs and guns and tells them to go on the street. It was such a great life. Everybody be pushing that. So, people watch what you're doing, other kids, and they're going to open up a business. And people that you never met in your life are going to see what you're doing in your area, and they're going to try to mimic that somewhere else. And good for them. That's competition and drive, and capitalism is what this country's made of, and what makes you successful and makes you ambitious. So I really
100%.
Yeah, Naim,
thank you, John.
John and I have been talking about dads, especially, and just like what he was saying, the effect that it has on the whole family. And they have International Women's Day and things like that. But I'm going to talk to the audience right now, and if you know of any dads that are setting a really good example for their families and their children, either write something in the comments so we can contact them, or contact John's website at johnalite.com. And we might just have them on the show in some capacity. But yeah, you sound like a great dad. I do have a dad and mom question for you, though. Off camera, we're talking about the solstice and seeing you have little babies, and I have children also. How do you deal with naps when the sun doesn't go down or the sun doesn't come up for long stretches? I mean, just daylight savings time around here, used to be, 1 hour off, and they can throw a schedule in
Yeah.
tizzy.
Well, it's definitely confusing at first, but the human body is a amazing mechanism that could adapt to just about anything, and you do get into a rhythm eventually. And as far as the kids, I mean, they're born here. They're confused when they come down there. What happened to the sun? Right. Is it midnight yet? Right. But I just wanted to touch on what John said earlier. John, I do appreciate all the kind words there. And definitely knowing your history, you're someone that's seen both the good and bad of the world, and it's definitely very valuable coming from you. So thank you for that. Again, and I mean, I grew up in the city of Chicago, literally on playgrounds, not in the best parts of town. It's no secret when you come to America as an immigrant in a large metropolitan city, they don't exactly drop you off in the Hamptons. You kind of start in the rougher parts of town. And I was definitely no stranger to seeing adversity and poverty and all of that. And I was around it all the time. You asked me earlier if I had ever gotten in any big trouble. I haven't, but I definitely have had the opportunity, plenty. And luckily for me, I've been able to witness both some very positive people in my life and some very negative people in my life. There's something to be learned from that as well, and I had both of them. So I was able to kind of see my future just looking at both sides of these folks that were around my life.
Yeah, I try to, every show, whether it's somebody like you that's positive, I try to make an example, and the good end is yourself. And on the bad end, for the people that are watching, you have these gangsters, mob guys that are glamorizing that life, and that they're telling you all these beautiful, glamorous stories of loyalty. And meanwhile, these same guys that are talking about that have cooperated, they don't believe in a life where they wouldn't have did that. And they're hiding somewhere else. They're not under their same names. They're not in the same neighborhoods they grew up with. And they tell these nonsense stories, and people are looking and listening and telling you what great, how good this guy was as a boss, as a captain, and this nonsense. And they're not the guys that were out there squeezing that trigger. Those are not the guys who were out there going to prisons, or they wouldn't have cooperated. And those are not the guys that really believe in what they're saying. But for some reason, they want to stay relevant. That's all they know how to do, is talk about the things they actually betrayed and don't believe in. And so, I try to bring the understanding that kids are naive when they're young, no different than I was. You buy into it. You go out there and you do some of the things I was doing, which was a lot of violence. And you're going to get stabbed up and shot up like I did. Most of my friends end up losing their lives. And you're going to learn that the right way in life is exactly what you're doing. Those young guys I had on last week with Katie, and I'm just being honest, trying to save some kids' lives. It's not that I want to knock all these mob guys, but trust me, I grew up with them. They're full of shit. It's the best way.
Well, John, I can give it to you from my end here, and kind of my perspective on the mob and the mob mentality and all of that. First of all, as an Albanian, our culture is pretty well intertwined in that lifestyle. And I'm not talking about, criminals. I'm not talking about any kind of organization. I mean, just, Uncle Joe from down the street, but he's essentially a gangster in his neighborhood, not for crime, but just his demeanor is that. That part of the world tends to breed culturally, because we're very big on honor, respect, loyalty, brotherhood, tribalism, all of that stuff. But we're a tribal people at the end of the day. So as an Albanian, certainly the culture, the mafia culture is unfortunately is attracting to us, because it's very parallel with our culture. Our non-criminal culture is very similar to that.
We believe in Besa, Kanun, and the people that don't know what that is. And so we are, as family entered, very loyal, but that's not the mob world. We're loyal to.
Correct. Yeah, and the second part I was going to get to is that's my perspective on the the Albanian side of me. That's kind of that would be, I would say, my attraction to that life, right? But that would be the Albanian side, just because there's starking similarities between just how you grew up at home compared to what you hear about that. The American side of me, right? Hollywood is absolutely to blame for that. They've done some really good movies with some amazing actors over the years about that life, right? So as an Albanian American, you're like, well, wait a minute, that's, that guy is acting just like my uncle so-and-so. There's a lot of similarities. Now, for me personally, and there's a lot like me, you grow up in a part of town that's a little bit rougher, and you see a lot of bad stuff. And if you have enough sense, you can separate the two. You can say, all right, culturally we're similar, but we're not criminals, number one. And Hollywood may make it look cool, but in reality it's not, because you could see the difference. So a vast majority of people have the ability to be able to separate the two. You watch a movie, it's very interesting, have a good night, and then you go back to working at Best Buy tomorrow. So most people have the ability. Unfortunately, there are a few that like you said, they would glorify that lifestyle, but I think they're speaking from a point of no experience, where they're basing it off of movies essentially, and then the real life, as is different.
I think a lot of Albanians are very proud people because of our culture. We were a fighting nation for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. We're a tough country. Right. Because we were suppressed.
We were always on defense. We've never gone into anybody else's home, but we are one hell of a defender when it comes to.
And that's a good thing. That's not the part I'm talking about. The loyalty we have, even during the Nazi days with the Jews, we took them in, we protected them. That's the Albanian culture, is to be proud people, and to defend.
It's the only country that had more Jews. It's the only country that had more Jews after World War II than before it. The only one.
because we're a hospital. We are, not because we're Albanian. We're very hospitable people. If you come in, we're friends, and we just talk. You know how you'll open the door for me, not because it's me. It's because I'm Albanian,
100%.
and we do that for each other. And
That
that's
could be at 3 a.m. too.
yeah, any hour. It's true. And so the people that are proud, are tough, are fighters for the right reason, I respect them. I'm talking about the people as fathers, what Katie was saying. We owe it to this generation and the ones after that, like my friend Genti Toskezi that does all the shows with me. He's a neurosurgeon. So people think that Albanians are just rough. No, they got good hearts and they're very educated, very successful around the world now. So, recently in Parliament, we're talking about not allowing Albanians into their country anymore, and they bashed us. And I was very outspoken, saying for them to say something as ridiculous like that on a Parliament floor, I had to fire back and say, we have so many Albanians in every culture and every industry that's so successful that you're going to handpick a couple that did the wrong thing and bash our whole society. No, I can't stand it. Being in a public eye, I need to speak out and say that's not true. The truth is 98, 99% are doing the right thing. There's always going to be a percent that gets lost. That doesn't even mean they're bad people. I don't judge anybody. I just say they need somebody like myself that's been involved in it to put them back on the right track. And I wish somebody was there for me to put me on the right track. But our culture, I'm very proud of Albanians, and people know I'm very patriotic to this country and to Albania. So I'm outspoken, and I love to have guys like yourself on.
I share your sentiment there, John.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody knows I have it all over me. The skeet,
right.
I can get the skeet down there. Yeah.
No, but like you said, both to this country and the other one. So, but back to your point, John. Back to your point. Let's remember historically, Albanians have been oppressed and held back. There you go. But yeah, Albanians have been historically oppressed and held back for a very long time. So a lot of the diamonds in the rough, if you will, unfortunately remained in the rough. They couldn't get to the diamond status because we weren't allowed to, right? But in the last 30 to 40 years, a lot of folks that were able to get out of that mess, if you will, and go into other countries have proven that they are a very loyal citizen to have, a very patriotic citizen. They give you everything they got. They'll give you the food off of their kids' table. Right. So we are only on this first generation, and I'll say this is my generation, right? Roughly my age group. We are on the first generation of being a free people where we could essentially do what we're capable of doing without any interference. So I think we're going to see a lot of good stuff to come in the next few generations from the Albanian community. I think the world will finally get a chance to put us on the map as a legitimate ethnic group that is productive to the world and beneficial.
One of the reasons I don't want Albanians
Europe for 500 years. Are you kidding me? Right.
I don't like Albanians to believe they're a victim, and I don't like when they do that to the inner city kids with reparations. And because if anybody needs reparations, it would be our culture, because we've been suppressed, like you said, for so many years, hundreds and hundreds of years, that I don't want as an excuse. We're strong people. Anybody that's strong doesn't use that as an excuse. They get off the floor and they move on and they fight back and they become successful. That's your reparations, to be successful and to be proud. To take handouts when a government does that, it's just suppressing them. They know what they're doing. They're manipulating, maneuvering them into being victims, and victims never get up off the floor, off the canvas, and become anybody. So I'm a big fighter for the inner cities, for all cultures, Black, Spanish. I grew up with them.
Of course.
I do my talks in all these areas. Those are my buddies. Those are my friends. Those are my brothers. So I don't like anybody giving handouts. And when you see leaders in that community asking for handouts, that's saying I'm weak. I can't do this on my own. I'm not successful. I'm not smart enough. And when anybody says it's insulting to my friends in those communities, that they're not smart enough to get voter ID and things like this, that's racist to say something like, because you're Black, Spanish, Indian, or any other culture, you're too stupid to get a voter ID, is so insulting to me when they're talking about my friends, their families that I grew up with. That's the worst insult you could say. When somebody talks about racism, that's racism. You're trying to hold them down. And I try to pick people up and tell them, listen, we all been through a lot of shit. You know, I've been in prisons. I can use that victim status crap, and I don't do it, and I don't want anybody else to do it. In our culture, especially, we're proud. And I try to push that in all the inner cities. Be proud of who you are. Don't let anybody tell you you're too weak or too stupid, or you're not able to be successful because our ancestors were held down. So what? We were slaves too. You know, I just try to push a real agenda of being honest and telling everybody you're good enough to be successful. Just know that yourself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, John. And your background should not determine your future. That's silly, especially in this day and age. And let's not forget, there's two ways to enslave a man. One is to work him without pay, right? That's the one we know about. The one we don't hear about a lot is to pay him without work. And that's a common theme with, unfortunately, the more recent government and all the handouts, like you mentioned. That's another way to enslave people, is to get them used to receiving something for nothing, just enough, not very much. You know, it's an excellent way of handicapping people. It's an excellent way of,
like the mafia does. They want them under their thumb.
Exactly. And then once you get used to that lifestyle, it's very hard to go out and, you know. So, you know, the victim mentality, like you said, as Albanians, it's really easy for us to play that card, but it's so rare to hear it. You know, we are definitely folks that you know, get knocked down and get right back up, for the most part, at least. But yeah, there's absolutely no benefit from being or from having a victim mentality. You got to get back up.
Well, it's interesting to listen to you two talk about your culture, and it reminds me of something one of my sons learned in Taekwondo. It was called Chip's Eye, and just the character qualities that you talk about really are what Hollywood thinks the mob is, or portrays the mob to be, but it's courtesy, humility, integrity, perseverance, and indomitable spirit. And that's what you encompass with your culture. And that is more, you know, quote unquote mob loyalty and honesty than what the mob really is. But Hollywood likes to play it the other way.
Right. No, thank you for that, Katie. That's absolutely right. And again, culturally, as an Albanian, and this has been going on for I'd say the last millennium, right? The last 1,000 years, it's been unwritten and all of that. The loyalty towards one another and honor, preserving your honor and respect, and how you treat your family and your community, that is literally ingrained into us from the day you're born. And there's no criminal aspect of it. It is simply just a way of life. You know, it just happens to parallel quite a bit. There's theories on this. I mean, there's a good, the Arbresh people, there's a good, you know, 500 years ago, they fled Albania when the Ottomans conquered, and you know, they brought a lot of their culture with them, and still till this day they speak the old Albanian from that time. You know, so it is very possible, you know, go out on a limb here, that the Italians may have, or the mob faction may have taken a little bit of that culture for themselves.
There you go.
You know,
like a true Albanian right there.
I love, everybody knows I love our culture. I'm one of the most proudest Albanian, raised on my grandfather's lap. I love Albanians. I love the thought process. I love the loyalty and the heart of a lion. I love our flag, the double-headed eagle. And that being said, we're proud. And being proud makes you ambitious and makes you work. And that's how I'll end this. And I just want to tell you, Fala Mindire, Mir Pashu.
Thank you, you too. And we hope to see you out here.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to come visit you. And get my number from Katie, my personal number. And let us know again one more time where they can get a hold of you, your websites, Instagram, anything that you have, so people can reach out to your business. And if they need any advice from you on products or anything, where they can talk to you.
Yeah, and I mean, anyone, you know, any youngin out there that's kind of looking for you know, some business direction, or wants to hear it from, you know, someone that essentially came from nothing to something, which would be me in this case, I'd be more than happy to lend some advice. And you know, we all need help along the way, and I certainly got my fair share of it. So I'd be more than happy to give back to anyone that has questions or needs a little bit of guidance in that sense. But yeah, the shop is called Double Eagle Cannabis. It's at 2042 East 3rd Avenue in Anchorage. Our email is doubleeagleak@gmail.com. That's doubleeagleak, one word, @gmail.com. And John, thank you so much for your time. That shirt looks good on you, by the way.
Thank you. I'm gonna wear the white one tomorrow.
I'll send you different variations as we experiment with different apparel. I'll keep sending you one.
Yeah, please. And actually, I wore it at the gym the other day. So
Yeah.
They asked me who designed it. I said I didn't have an answer. So I was like,
yeah. Well,
the hat designed it most likely. But,
yeah. No, I mean it's fitting for me with my background. So.
Yeah, if people that like the what we talked about, please comment. Any questions on cannabis business, please write us on our website, johnalite.com. Follow me on John Alite Instagram, and shirts and all our merchandise is on my website. Anybody needs to get in touch with Naim, you want to get in touch with us also, we can put you in touch with him or hit him directly on what he just left you guys for his store and his sites. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Katie?
Yep, thank you. And thank you, Naim. It was so nice to meet you. And an afternoon with Albanians, what could be better, right?
Thank you guys.
Naim, you get my number from Katie after we hang up and have it person. I'll definitely going to come see you probably this summer. So I'll see you.
Best time of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.